Hello. In this video, I explain how retention policies work in NAKIVO Backup and Replication and how to configure them. NAKIVO Backup and Replication allows you to set your own custom retention policy for each job, including backup copy jobs used to archive your backups. The behavior of a retention policy can vary depending on where you store the backup, whether in a forever incremental backup repository or an incremental with full backup repository. Let's first look at each repository type in more detail. To create a forever incremental type of backup repository, you should deselect the Store Backups in Separate Files option in the last step of the Backup Repository Creation wizard. When using a forever incremental backup repository, the solution creates an initial full data set backup, and subsequently only incremental backups are created. These incremental backups store only changed data blocks and can be used to restore machines or objects to a specific point in time. This approach is ideal for simple disk-based DS and NAS backup destinations. On the other hand, the incremental with full backups repository, that is, repositories created with the Store Backups in Separate Files option enabled, are the default type in NAKIVO Backup and Replication. Backups are stored as chains of recovery points, each chain starting with a full backup, and subsequent incremental recovery points save only changed data blocks. A new full backup, created as defined in the job settings, starts a new chain. The old chain can't be deleted until the new one begins. This approach is recommended for deduplication appliances and object-level cloud storage used as backup destinations. To summarize, whether you choose a forever incremental or an incremental with full backups repository type will depend on your specific requirements and where you want to store your backups. The forever incremental repository offers built-in deduplication at the repository level and compression but requires backup space reclamation. You can read more about this by following the link in the description. However, it doesn't support backup immutability and source-side backup encryption. The incremental with full backup repository is suited for enterprise-scale deployments requiring high reliability, top performance, and supports more backup targets and cybersecurity features like immutability and backup encryption. This is why the default and recommended backup repository type in NAKIVO Backup and Replication is the incremental with full backups repository. Now let's create a backup job to better understand how the retention policy is configured for each type of repository. Go to Data Protection, click Plus and create a new backup job, for example, for VMware VMs. However, this logic applies to any other workload that you protect with NAKIVO Backup and Replication. Let's select several VMs for the purpose of this demo. At the next step, select a destination for the backup. At the Schedule step, I will first explain how to configure a retention policy for a forever incremental backup. Let's suppose that I want to create a retention policy that allows me to restore data from any of the last 7 days and from any week within the last 4 weeks. Then I need to configure backups to run daily Monday through Saturday at 6 p.m., and each backup will be retained for 7 days. Since the backup is forever incremental, the solution will store 7 recovery points corresponding to the last 7 days. By the time a new Monday backup is created, the oldest recovery point from Monday expires and is automatically removed. Then I add my weekly backup schedule to run every Sunday at 11 p.m. and to be kept for 4 weeks. Then for the backup on Sunday, the NAKIVO solution will keep 4 weekly backups made on Sundays. By the time the 5th weekly backup is created, the oldest weekly backup created 4 weeks ago would expire and is automatically removed. To learn more about how forever incremental backups are stored, you can check the article linked in the description. And even though the space previously allocated to the removed recovery points is marked as free and can be reused by new data blocks on subsequent job runs, the actual size of the backup repository may not shrink to reflect the freed up space. To show the real size of the backup repository, the space previously occupied by deleted data blocks should be released to the file system. This process is called backup space reclamation, and it can be run manually or scheduled. To reclaim storage space, go to Settings, then Repositories, choose your forever incremental backup repository, click the three-dot menu and select Reclaim and Use Space. Now, let's suppose that you want to store your backups in an incremental with full backup repository. Let's go back and change the destination for the backup to this type of repository, which is the default when creating local, remote, NFS, SMB, and cloud backup repositories. I'll select the Wasabi Cloud repository in this example. In addition to setting up the retention settings for rotating backups on a daily, weekly, monthly basis of the schedule step, you have to make sure to set the schedule for creating full backups at the option step. Suppose that I would like to create a full backup once per week every Sunday. Now I go back to the retention settings at the schedule step. I still have the same settings from earlier. In this scenario, when a recovery point expires, it is not automatically deleted. NAKIVO Backup and Replication always keeps it one full chain of recovery points, including the full backup and its dependent increments. All the recovery points in a chain are deleted only if they have all expired and there's a subsequent full backup created already. In addition, the full backup is not retained as a weekly, monthly, or yearly recovery point. In other cases, when the full recovery point has not expired and it is retained as a weekly, monthly, or yearly backup, only the expired incremental recovery points are deleted. For example, since I've set up the full backups to be created once per week on Sundays, the NAKIVO solution creates the initial full backup on a Sunday. Then on Monday through Saturday, it creates incremental recovery points. The following week, the initial Monday recovery point expires but is not deleted, since to recreate the workload, let's say for Saturday, that recovery point is needed. NAKIVO Backup and Replication will not delete the initial Sunday backup because I decided to keep the weekly backups for 4 weeks in retention settings, and my first job run is on the last Sunday of the month in this example. Otherwise, the recovery point will be removed when it expires and the next full recovery point has already been created. This retention policy in my case means that at any one point, I will have one full week of recovery points allowing daily point-in-time restores, the current week that is being backed up, and 4 weekly recovery points. I can also add a monthly schedule and create a backup on the last Sunday of each month. I'll set the solution to keep the monthly recovery points for 3 months. This means that in addition to the above, at any one point, I will have 3 monthly recovery points available with this retention policy. You can go on and add a yearly recovery point, for example, on the last Sunday of the year. Eventually, I can also add a periodic backup point for even more granularity. When configuring retention, it's recommended that you set up immutability for recovery points to match the retention period. If you set up immutability for 30 days for a recovery point that you want to retain for 7 days only, NAKIVO Backup and Replication won't be able to delete this recovery point until the immutability period has expired. I've just covered how to set the retention policy for a backup job. Let's look at retention policies for backup copy jobs. I go back to the Data Protection tab to create a backup copy job for an existing backup job that I have. After going back to the Data Protection panel, let's create a backup copy job, for example, for a Proxmox VE backup. I will store the backup copy job in Wasabi, an S3-based object-level cloud storage. The Wasabi repository I'm using is an incremental with full backups type of repository. As for retention, the NAKIVO solution allows us to set the same retention as for the original backup job or to customize retention based on what I said previously. Thus, the retention is also calculated based on how often a full backup is created. Also, as always, you can create a full backup at the options step. That's all for this demo. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, click the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch new uploads. You can also download a free trial version of NAKIVO Backup and Replication using the link in the description and try NAKIVO Backup and Replication in your own environment for 15 days.